Right, we will get through this chapter today. It's just I'm in pain. I've got to move around a lot. And it's going on forever. And I can't say words. You might get a lot of... I do apologise. You might get a lot of videos from me today. Because usually Friday I sit there and paint. And I can't sit in one place. And I'm going to get bored. So you're not going to get a lot of reading once I've done this chapter. That's enough for today. But once I've done this chapter. But... you might get a load of nonsense from me because it's just, sometimes I'm in a mood for that. I bought some more funny little puppets, so that's a video for you to not watch. But it will make me laugh. Right. I feel like I'm making out as if this is a chore, but it's not. I'm just not very good at the words. Some of the complicated words. And I do feel a bit thick, but this is very interesting, but I wish that I could read it better for you. Sorry, I tried my best. The earliest important literary source written with the conscious intention of describing something of the Old English paganism is a section of the De Temporum Ration. Accents, mind? All over it, by the Venerable Bede, or Bede, or Bede, or Bede, or Bede, or Bede. It's B-E-D-E. I mean, you know, make it up yourself. AD 673 to 735. I hope somebody ain't just like some person that's into history and just randomly come across this. I'll be surprised. Bede, bade, bead, biddy, bede, says that the Anglo-Saxon heathen year began on 20 December fuck off, 20 December of 25th of December. Certain ceremonies, I'll give myself an headache again, which he does not describe, gave what we now call Boxing Night the title of Modrenecht or Mother's Night. The last month of the old year and the first of the new were together called Gaiuli, modern Yule, a word whose meaning is uncertain. The second month of the year was Solmanath, when cakes were offered to their gods, says Bidi, Bida, Badu, Bidi, Bidi. Most scholars reject this as an explanation of the name because no word sol, meaning cakes, is known in Anglo-Saxon. But it seems to me that sol is an old word for sun and that Bede's account is based on a genuine tradition. In fact, because Solmanath would coincide with what is now February, when it is customary to begin the year's ploughing, and because of what we know of the baking of cakes to be placed in the first furrow according to the charm to restore fertility to the land where both sun and earth are worshipped, it seems more than possible that Bede is remembering the ancient ritual of ploughing in the loaves. Is it videoing? The third and fourth months are said to be named after two goddesses called Hretha and Eoster, are Easter. Though some scholars believe Bede, what should I call him? B-E-D-E. Bede, was guilty of back formation here. That is to say, he constructed the names of these two in order to explain the names of the months. There is, however, no evidence to suggest such faking. Thrimilki was the name of the fifth month, because cows were then milked 3 times a day. A logical and practical name for May, when the flush of fresh green grass produces a corresponding flush of milk. A time of year which farmers with little means of overwintering stock and no concentrated cow cake must have awaited with impatience and received with joy. The 6th and 7th months were together called Litha, an ancient name seemingly meaning moon. Weodmanath was the weed month. Halegmanath, the holy month, or as Bede calls it, month of offerings, which is an obvious indication of a heathen harvest festival. Winterfilith is connected by Bede with the appearance of the first full moon of winter. Winterfilith, winter full moon. And November was Blotmanath, the blood month, because they sacrificed to the gods the animals which they were about to kill. Again, a combination of religion and practical husbandry by primitive farmers who had not as yet found the means of keeping more than a small percentage of their flocks and herds alive during the winter. These few remarks by Bede show us a people who of necessity fitted closely into the pattern of the changing year, who were of the earth and what grows in it, who breathed the farmy exhalations of cattle and sheep, who marked the passage of time according to the life cycle of their stock and the growth of their plants, or by the appropriate period for offerings to the gods, who drew on even deeper wells of religious feeling than the worship of personal gods, being conscious day and night of the sun in its majesty and the moon in its splendour. In fact, a people who were in a symbiotic relationship with Mother Earth and Father Sky. We, their descendants, no longer stand in such a relationship towards nature. That's nice. That's nice, isn't it? So there's a picture. A people who of necessity fitted closely into the pattern of changing year. This composite scene from the 9th century at Trek Salter shows ploughing with oxen, sowing and harvesting with scythes. Yeah. A comparison between ourselves and our ancestors in the light of their calendar will illuminate some of the dark corners, as we may think it, of their heathenism. Their roof was the sky, and the sun by day and the moon by night. As for us, most of our heads are covered day and night by a home or office or ceiling or factory shed. Their walls were the winds, ours are bricks and mortar. Their floor was the earth, carpeted with grass and crops, weeds and wildflowers. Ours is concrete and tarmacadam. Their measure of time was the seasons and the heavenly lights. Ours is the alarm clock or the wireless pips. Their food came not from processing plants, cans and deep freeze cabinets, but from their own fields and stock. Their clothes were not reach-me-downs at the end of the production line, but rough homespun garments made by their own hands, and their success or failure in life depended not on the scientific application of knowledge, but on the gods and goddesses of the sky, earth and weather in combat with the demon giants of flood, fire, drought and pestilence. In other words, our forefathers of 1500 years ago lived not what we call close to nature, but actually involved with nature. They were not creatures apart, different from the birds, plants or animals, but fitted into the natural cycle of synthesis and disintegration, which any kind of civilization always modifies. Because they were involved with nature, with whom they had intimately to come to terms with if they wanted to go on living, the Old English looked with awe on the life-giving sky and earth, on the death-dealing thunderstorm and winter. It is from the constant awareness of the living connection between man and the phenomenal world that the myths of our ancestors arise, that their gods are born, in spite of a millennium and a half of civilizing influences. We, their descendants, are occasionally able to slip into this same relationship with nature, as witness the following report of a terrifying thunderstorm from the News Chronicle for August 30th, 1956. An 18-year-old sapper was killed when lightning struck 6 soldiers at Ash Ranges near Aldershot yesterday. The NCO in charge, Sergeant William Kendrick, said, "It looked as if they had been in action. There was a terrific bang, everything went black, and it seemed as though someone was trying to hammer us into the ground." Is there any wonder that the Old English looked on a thunderstorm as the great god Thunor, whose hammer was a thunderbolt? For the attitude of Sergeant Kendrick, perhaps only for a few seconds, is plainly shown by the words to have been the same as our pagan ancestors, namely that the demonic and the divine were immanent in nature. There are written proofs that the pagan English had temples in which they housed images of the gods they wished to praise and appease. Bede quotes a letter dated June the 7th, 601, written by Pope Gregory the Great to Abbot Mellitus on the departure of the abbot for England. When, by God's help, you come to our most reverend brother, Bishop Augustine in Kent, I want you to tell him how earnestly I have been pondering over the affairs of the English. I have come to the conclusion that the temples of the idols in England should not on any account be destroyed. Augustine must smash the idols, but the temples themselves should be sprinkled with holy water and altars set up in them in which relics are to be enclosed. For we ought to take advantage of well-built temples by purifying them from devil worship and dedicating them to the service of the true God. In this way, I hope the people, seeing their temples are not destroyed, will leave their idolatry and yet continue to frequent the places as formerly, so coming to know and revere the true God. And since the sacrifice of many oxen to devils is their custom, some day rite ought to be solemnized in its place, such as a day of dedication for festivals for the holy martyrs whose relics are there enshrined. On such high days the people might well build themselves shelters of boughs round about the churches that were once temples and celebrate the occasion with pious feasting. They must no more sacrifice animals to the devil, but they may kill them for food to the glory of God, while giving thanks for the bounty to the provider of all gifts. Bede or Bede himself knew an unbroken tradition of at least one heathen temple seen by King Aldwulf of East Anglia, who lived into our own times, and who testified that this temple was still standing in his day, and that he had seen it when a boy.